2018, Dennis. Now, it's often difficult to do business in Africa. The World Bank ranks many countries there among the hardest places to sell goods and services. But an ambitious project to ease trade between them is now a step closer to reality. The African Union agreed last year to create a free trade zone on the continent, the largest since the World Trade Organization was formed. On Tuesday, Gambia became the 22nd country to ratify the accord, reaching the threshold for it to be implemented. It's hoped the deal will reduce tariffs and trade rules and create jobs for a market of 1.2 billion people. So who signed up to this then? Well, 52 of the 55 African Union members have endorsed the deal. The 22 countries here in orange, they've ratified it. 3 countries, though, they haven't signed up at all. They are Benin, Eritrea, and most importantly, Nigeria, and you can see them in grey. Now, Nigeria, as you know, is Africa's largest economy.
Hello family, this is African Esquire. Some very interesting and good developments are coming out of the continent of Africa, and good developments that I think could definitely lend to the idea of self-determination, not just for people in Africa, but also people throughout the diaspora. And because of that, I'm going to do this video in 2 segments. The first is going to regard the African continent, the people of Africa, and the second is going to regard the possible implications for people in the diaspora. So, if you haven't heard, there's a African Free Trade Agreement that has finally, after a lot of debate, after a lot of hard labor for the people of the African countries, has finally been ratified. And this is something that has a great potential for Africa, because as you know, I am a Pan-Africanist, and Pan-Africanists, what do we say? We need a united Africa. We need Africa to be for Africans. We need things that encourage Africa being blended and not encourage the separation and the divisiveness of that has been put into Africa by colonialism. So I'm going to just briefly give a little outlay of what's going on. This is on africanews.com. And says the AFCFTA agreement to be implemented after Gambia's historic ratification. Gambia's parliament on Tuesday, and this was on, I believe, April 3rd. Gambia's parliament on Tuesday approved the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, becoming the 22nd nation to do so, and effectively meeting the minimum threshold for the agreement to come into force. The AFCFTA, which was enacted last year, seeks to create the largest trade zone in the world, increase intra-Africa trade by 52% by the year 2022, and remove tariffs on 90% of goods. After the African Union's Commissioner on Trade and Industry, Albert Muchanga, led celebrations of the historic achievement, posting on his Twitter account that the AFCFTA market is ready for launch of its operational phase in July of this year. Now, why is this so important? If you don't know, Africa really is a big, vast continent that has vast trading value. That's why you always try to see outsiders trying to trade with Africa. But the African people have stated that they want to encourage internal trade. And there are trade agreements like this in other places inside of the world. For example, the North American Treaty Agreement, I believe is what it's called, NAFTA. That's between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and this encourages the trade between those 3 entities. There's ones under the European Union, and we can see that it has taken place as far as Pan-Europeanism, Pan-Caucasianism, if that's what you want to call it, and Europeans have recognized that in order to protect their best interests, they want to have these type of trade agreements with each other in order to encourage more trade with the people who they see as being ideologically closest to them. Now, when you look at the African continent, it has always been very much not forced that type of unified movement. It has been very much separated, as I said, has been divided because of colonialism. Because colonialism, the whole purpose of dividing Africa, when the Europeans decided to draw borders in Africa, some of these borders cut in half ethnic groups that have been living in Africa as one nation for thousands of years prior to colonialism. Yet they drew borders that divided these people. They drew borders that put some ethnic groups with other ethnic groups who probably should not have been put together, because of that we have a lot of wars in Africa. So all of these things have been man-made and created, and it creates a system of just chaos. That's what we really see when it comes to the African continent. It's chaos. I mean, people who were never meant to be forced into borders as they are now forced, and they're forced under a nation, under national sovereignty, and they're told you have to now listen to the country that has sovereignty over you. And this has caused conflict in the countries, and it's caused conflict outside of the countries, and the conflicts are many and numerous. We know of wars, the wars inside of Congo, for example, between Rwanda, Congo. We know wars inside of Rwanda. We know so many wars within the African continent, so many genocides, so many things that have happened that have just devastated the African people. So all of these things, as I stated, were created conditions by Europeans. But it's important that we start realizing that, number one, we are one people. If we were not one people, we would not have been subjected to the same type of oppression from Europe, from the colonial powers. We would not have been subjected to the same severity of oppression. We would not have been subjected to the same genocide, exploitation. If we were not one people who have a united destiny, then we would not have all been categorized as being Negroid, as being up for exploitation, up for slavery, up for colonialism, up for these things. And because of that, we are united in our destiny. So, of course, as we stated many times on this channel, Europe had united to overcome us. They united to destroy our civilization. And now the only real possible way that we can get back our own sovereignty, have self-determination, the right to determine our own destiny, our own governments, without European influence, without Europeans buying our leaders, without Europeans manipulating our politicians, putting military into our countries. The only way that we can possibly obtain this is if we all unite together. And it sounds wishful, but it's not that hard. You know, these are things that are done for so many other people. The Asian continent, the European continent, all of them understand that we have to unite together if we're going to have the maximum impact. The Americas and Europe, they're not even on the same continent, but the fact is they have a European rule. So does South Africa have European rule. So does Israel have European rule. So that's why you have all of these people who understand that, hey, if we want to maintain European rule, we have to come together in order to keep these Africans oppressed. In the same way, Africans must come together and understand that if they want to have a destiny, if they want to be free, truly free, not free ceremonially, that we have to loosen the chains that have been put on us and come together to do so. So, that whole spill, just to say that this is very positive. It's a very positive move. It does not mean an end-all or be-all. We have to understand that while the African leaders who are in position to make these decisions have made a positive decision, and all of these things should be celebrated. These should not be seen as insignificant, because we know that these leaders are corrupt. We know that these leaders are puppets. But at the same time, we have to celebrate the increase in consciousness. Regardless of what type of things you see going on in Africa, the brokenness you see, there's definitely a movement of consciousness that is growing slowly. And a lot of it is because of social media. A lot of it is because people are saying we have to have one Africa. We have to be united. We can't keep letting ourselves be subjected to European control. So it's different variations where you have some people who are outright speaking against Europe. I mean, Paul Kagame of Rwanda has been more bold in that. And on a number of times, Nana Ofuo, oh gosh, y'all gonna get me if I don't get his name right. Let me look up the president of Ghana's name. Of Ghana. Nana Akufo-Addo. I don't know why I keep calling him Afuo. Nana Akufo-Addo, he has many times spoken out publicly against colonialism. He's spoken out against France inside of a video that was very much noted by African people. Wow, you have this black man standing up saying, we don't want your handouts. These leaders are still puppets. Just understand, because ultimately they're still beholden to a system of capitalism. They're still beholden to a system of global imperialism, global capitalism, global neocolonialism. You know, not too many people are standing up directly against it. However, they are making moves and strides to certainly separate themselves from the crowd. And for that, we have to celebrate. So know that there's a victory, and there's still not a complete victory. The complete victory is when we have a total removal of colonial influence and control over the politics of African governments. And I think the real victory will be when you have African people come together collectively and redefine what they want for a government. Not just redefine it, but reconstrue their constitution to ensure that their leaders are actually giving them power. And as you know, over in Sudan right now, there is a lot of movement for that is promising. I did a video on that recently, that over in Sudan, people are not just saying, we want a new leader, we want someone who's going to give us words for now to make us feel better, but they are actually saying, no, we want a new government that is going to be civilian ran. So all of these things are showing the increase of our consciousness, and ultimately we have to keep nourishing this consciousness. We have to keep talking about these things. We have to keep putting out the information about the benefits of having not only United Africa, but a United Africa where colonialism no longer is running rampant, where these leaders who are beholden to Western powers are no longer in positions of influence. So, of course, there always has to be a but. And the but in this situation is Nigeria, for some reason, has held out as wanting to be a part of this free trade agreement. Now, this is interesting. Nigeria currently gets most of their imports from Europe, like a lot of countries in Africa. And this agreement would instead encourage Nigeria to get its imports from other African countries. And the thing about the European imports, a lot of these imports are not of quality. For example, you might have like medications that get sent to Africa. You might have clothing. You might have things that like building materials, but because they basically know that they can probably get off selling these things to African people. There's a lot of pushback from different people when it comes to them selling horrible technology, things that don't work, cars that don't work, and because they know that they'll take it. So it's not necessarily positive. It's not positive at all that you're getting all your stuff from Europe. Not to mention, not just the fact that it's not necessarily quality things, but also the fact that it's going to cost you more to import all the way from Europe, as opposed to if you sign this agreement where you have tariffs lifted, where you have incentives built to actually trade with your neighbors. It will cost you less. So the question is, why? Why would the country of Nigeria not want to join into this agreement? And there's been people saying, well, you know, Nigeria is the biggest, one of the biggest economies in Africa. Of course, they don't just want to jump on board. You know, they want to see how things pan out. But my thing is, what do you have to lose? I mean, the only thing that, you know, could be to lose, I would say, is if you have this agreement, maybe you don't have the leverage you once had as far as your neighbors. But the other thing is, maybe you'll piss off your European allies who want to continue the relationship, the trade relationship with you, as them being the major exporters to you. And I think that's probably likely what's going on. And particularly, obviously, this would create a heavy, not just incentive, but a heavy reality where the people would have to say, well, before we go over and buy this stuff from Europe, let's buy this stuff from our neighboring African countries. And putting that pressure on the government, maybe they don't want that smoke. Maybe they don't want to be questioned about their emphasis on importing from European countries. Because remember, a lot of the deals that are being made as far as Africans getting things imported from Europe is actually a form of neocolonialism, because these powers, the people, they have representatives, European, American, they send representatives and say, listen, you're going to buy these products from us. You buy these products from us. We give you some money, give the president or whatever leader some money. And, you keep that hush hush, but just keep buying these products from us. And so a lot of people are importing things from Europe or from the US, and they don't really know why they have these products. But the real reason is because that person wanted some money, that leader wanted some money, that president wanted some money. And because of their loyalty to the deal that was made off the books, where you don't have any control of it, you're in a position where you're getting a product that probably is more expensive than what you would have gotten, is not even as quality as you would have gotten. But it's not good for your country ultimately, because all these things are being imported, whereas you have neighboring countries where you could get things imported a lot cheaper. So just to close out this, we're going to read through an article. It's called, "It's Time for Nigeria to Sign the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement." This is from the Brookings Institute. It is difficult for Nigerians to not recoil at the government's lackluster response to signing and ratifying the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA. Now, the state of affairs contrasts sharply with Nigeria's prior activist roles on many African matters in the past. Let's skip through the examples, but basically, Nigerians have been more active in the past, is what they're trying to make the argument of. Now, these examples are by no means exhaustive. They serve to illustrate that there was once a time when Nigeria played a leadership role in shaping Africa's destiny. Fast forward to today, the African Union had previously set the year 2063 as the deadline to achieve the United States of Africa. Leaders recognize that there are no shortcuts to this ambitious vision. In launching the AFCFTA, African leaders recognize that continental challenges require continental responses. Indeed, the agreement is a reaffirmation that the responsibility for Africa's future lies in its own hands. Collective action at a time of increased global headwinds. From this broader historical perspective, Nigeria's current reluctance to ratify the Continental Free Trade Agreement amounts to a denial of privilege to shape Africa's future. While Nigeria continues to differ on the sidelines of history, other countries have assumed continental leadership. The status of let me skip that. Okay, that's basically it. But, as I stated, this makes no sense, any logical sense as to why they would not want to ratify and be part of this agreement, except for that they want to still have their allegiances to outside European powers. So, as I stated, it's good that this agreement's going on. But again, you're always going to have people. You're always going to have differences because of colonialism, that they don't see their interests as being the same as African interests. So is there going to be a United States of Africa? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen like this, where you have the former colonized countries come slowly start to unravel the things that colonialism ingrained until they finally reach a point of true revolution, or if it's going to have to be complete change, meaning like countries that exist now no longer existing in the future, because as I stated, colonialism put people together who were not necessarily together and separated people who were never separated. So I don't know which way it's going to happen, but I do know this is a positive step. I don't know why Nigeria doesn't want to join this, but as you should always keep in mind, there's probably a European power behind any type of movements to discourage African unity. So that's it for this video. I'm going to drink some water and get my voice in check so that I can do part 2. And that's all I have for this one. I will see you all in another video.